Today, our journey along the Natchez Trace takes us to a small community of Tupelo, the birthplace of a legend. Nestled within 15 acres of green lawn and shaded trees lies the Elvis Presley Birthplace Museum, a place that captures the humble beginnings of an icon. At the heart of the site stands Elvis' modest two-room shotgun house, constructed in 1934 by his father, Bynum Presley, using $180 borrowed from a local friend. By 1935, Elvis Aaron Presley was born in that very bedroom, arriving 35 minutes after his stillborn identical twin, Jesse Guerin. His mother, Gladys, later said that his survival, when so many others didn't, gave him the energy of two people. Inside the original rooms, bare floorboards, simple furniture speak volumes about the family's financial struggles, set against the broader context of the Great Depression. It feels personal, like you're stepped into the earliest memories. Surrounding the house are landmarks of his childhood devotion. The original Assembly of God Church, relocated here, is where the gospel music and worship first kindled his musical soul. It is said young Elvis absorbed those heartfelt melodies and the fire of the congregation, shaping the sounds that would define rock and roll. Just outside, the Becoming statues offers a poignant visual. A 13-year-old Elvis, guitar in hand, looking forward into the rolling hills where he would practice and dream. The placement between the chapel and museum symbolizes the crossroads between faith and fame. Inside the museum complex, exhibits bring Elvis to life. Colorful murals, artifacts, and a small and immersive theater that reveals the community and music that shaped his youth. The story wall features vivid recollections from his childhood friends, while the Fountain of Life, a beautiful display, symbolizes his years in Tupelo and beyond. Around the site, there's also a life-size teenaged Elvis statue, an iconic snapshot of the innocent and promise. The statue captures his youth in a way that feels real and grounding, reminding visitors that fame's origins often starts in the most ordinary moments. Finally, stepping outside to the ground brings everything full circle. The Presleys lost the house in 1938 when Vernon couldn't repay the loan, and the family moved frequently thereafter. Yet despite such hardship, Tupelo remained tied to Elvis's legacy. So much so that when he returned years later, he performed a benefit concert to help preserve his childhood home. Visiting the Elvis birthplace isn't just about seeing where a star was born. It's about immersing yourself into the origins of American legend, his family, his fate, his journey, in the small southern town that helped make him the king. After leaving Tupelo, our next stop along the trace is the Natchez Trace Parkway Visitor Center. This is really the hub for anyone wanting to understand the road's history, natural beauty, and the cultural importance before continuing the journey. Inside there are interactive exhibits that explore the origins of the trace, from its beginnings as an ancient migratory path for animals and native peoples, to its later role as a vital travel corridor for traders, settlers, and even soldiers. The displays highlight everything from the Choctaw and the Chickasaw heritage to frontier life to the rise of the steamboat commerce that eventually lessened the trace's importance. The Visitor Center also features a short interpretive film that gives context to what you'll see along the way. It's a nice way to connect the dots, understanding that this is more than just a road. It's a living thread that ties together centuries of American history. There's also a bookstore here, with maps, guidebooks, and souvenirs. Perfect if you want to plan your trip in more detail or bring home a piece of history. There's also rangers on hand to answer any questions and to share tips on hidden gems or seasonal highlights along the trace. The broader story told here is that the Natchez Trace was once among the most important routes in all the American South. Long before European settlement, the Chickasaw and the Choctaw and the Natchez people used these trails for trade, hunting, and communication. Later, in the late 1700s and early 1800s, the cane tucks from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio would float goods down the Mississippi River on flatboats, sell their cargo in Natchez or New Orleans, and then return home on foot along the trace. This road also carried soldiers during the War of 1812, mail carriers, and countless pioneers pushing into the frontier. The exhibits here remind you that the trace was not just a road, but a crossroads of cultures, where the native peoples, settlers, enslaved people, and travelers all left their mark. Our next stop along the trace is the Chickasaw Homeland Wayside exhibit. a place that recognizes the deep and lasting connection between this land and the Chickasaw people. For centuries before European contact, the Chickasaw lived, farmed, and hunted across the region of northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, and parts of Alabama and Kentucky. They were highly skilled agriculturalists, planting corn, beans, and squash, but they were also renowned as fierce warriors who defended their territory with determination. Unlike some of the other southeastern tribes, the Chickasaw resisted European encroachment for a long time, forming shifting alliances with the French, British, and later Americans to maintain their independence. The Natchez Trace itself was part of their world long before settlers used it as a pioneer road. To the Chickasaw, these trails linked villages, ceremonial grounds, and trade networks that reached as far as the Gulf Coast and the Great Lakes. Every bend in the path carried stories, traditions, and spiritual meaning that tied to the land. By the early 1800s, however, growing pressure from the U.S. expansion led to the loss of much of their territory. In the 1830s, the Chickasaw, like many tribes, were forced westward during the era of the Indian removal. Yet despite this upheaval, their culture, language, and traditions endure today, and they remain a vital nation with headquarters in Oklahoma. Stopping here serves as an important reminder. The Natchez Trace isn't just a road of pioneers and presidents. It's a homeland first, and the story of the Chickasaw is woven into every step of its history. Our next stop takes us back nearly 2 millennia, to one of the most intriguing archaeological sites along the Natchez Trace, the Bynum Mounds. Built by the Hopewell culture between 100 BC and 100 AD, the site once included at least 6 earthen burial mounds spread across a large ceremonial complex. Today, 2 of those mounds remain preserved, offering a glimpse into a culture that thrived long before European settlers ever arrived in this region. Excavations revealed that these mounds were more than just simple graves. They were sacred ceremonial centers, carefully constructed in multiple stages where leaders and honored members of the community were buried. Archaeologists discovered finely crafted artifacts inside, copper tools and ornaments, stone pipes carved with intricate details, and shells that were carried here from the distant Gulf Coast. These finds show that the people of Bynum were part of a vast trade network that stretched hundreds of miles, connecting cultures across what is now the United States. What makes the Bynum Mounds so remarkable is not just the artifacts, but what they represent. They speak to a society deeply rooted in ritual, spirituality, and community life. These grounds would have been a gathering place, a place of ceremony, and a place to honor ancestors. Standing here today, the mounds rise quietly from the landscape, blending into the trees and grasses around them. But they are powerful reminders that this stretch of land carries thousands of years of human history. Our next stop is one of the most mysterious spots along the trace. Witch Dance. The name itself comes from an old Chickasaw legend, which tells of witches who once gathered here to dance under the moonlight. According to the stories, wherever their feet touched the ground, the grass would never grow again. Even today, travelers point out patches of bare earth where nothing seemed to take root, adding to the eerie reputation of this place. Beyond the folklore, Witch Dance was also an important campsite along the old trace. Traders, soldiers, and explorers all passed through this stretch, often noting the unusual clearings and the stories locals would share about them. The site later became a resting spot for Confederate soldiers during the Civil War, layering history upon legend. It's a brief stop, but one that captures how the Natchez Trace is more than just a road. It's a place where history, myth, and mystery are woven together. Continuing down the Natchez Trace, we arrive at French Camptown, a small but historically significant settlement. This area was originally a French trading post in the 18th century, part of a network that connected the Mississippi River with the interior of the southeast. French traders would exchange European goods for deerskins, furs, and other local resources, creating a bustling hub of commerce long before the trace became widely traveled by Americans. The town later evolved as settlers of various backgrounds, French, Spanish, and Anglo-American, established homes and farms here. Artifacts and remnants from these early days give us a glimpse into the daily life on the frontier, from trading practices to the blending of cultural traditions. French Camp was also a waypoint for travelers on the Natchez Trace, offering rest and supplies on a journey that could be long and perilous. This was also one of my favorite stops, as it was unexpected, but the charm of this very small town caught my attention, and I needed to stop to explore. While there isn't much here, that is what makes it so special and worth the stop. It still has that old charm and slow way of life. The people we talked to were very welcoming, and they talked a lot about the area and its history. In the late 1700s and early 1800s, this southern section of the Trace became a vital road for trade and travel. Farmers and merchants from the Ohio Valley would float goods down the Mississippi River to New Orleans on flatboats. But since the boats couldn't make the return trip upstream, the men, called cane tucks, would sell their vessels for lumber, and then make the long, difficult journey home on foot. The Trace, though dangerous and often unforgiving, was their highway back north. Inns, trading posts, and settlements grew along the road to serve this steady stream of travelers. Further along the Natchez Trace, we enter the lush and serene landscape surrounding the Baldcypress Swamp and the Pearl River. This area is a striking contrast to the open fields and historic towns we've passed, with towering bald cypress trees draped in Spanish moss and waters that meandered gently through the swamp. The Pearl River has long been an important waterway for this region. For centuries, indigenous people relied on its resources, using fish, shellfish, and game to sustain communities. When European settlers arrived, they too recognized its value for the transportation, trade, and farming. The swamp's dense forests and wetlands provided both challenges and protection, shaping how the settlers and travelers interacted with the land. Walking along the edges of the swamp, it's easy to see why this environment has inspired so many local legends and stories. Bald cypress trees, some hundreds of years old, rise dramatically from the water, their wide base rooted deep in the swampy soil. The reflection of these majestic trees in the slow-moving waters is almost otherworldly, a reminder of the natural beauty that has remained largely unchanged even as history unfolded around it. This part of the Trace gives us a sense of the environment that early travelers would have encountered: swamps to navigate, rivers to cross, and the quiet, persistent rhythm of nature that shaped life in this region for generations. Even today, it's a powerful yet awe-inspiring stretch, offering a moment to pause and appreciate both the natural world and the history that has passed through it. The Trace was also a stage for conflict and change. Bandits, wildlife, and rough terrain made travel risky, and many stories of ambushes and struggles have become part of its folklore. In the early 1800s, treaties and forced removals deeply affected the native nations along this route. The Chickasaw and the Choctaw were particular in this displaced, leaving behind lands and homelands that the Trace still passes through today. These scars of history remain a reminder of the resilience and hardships endured here. After exploring the swamp, we stopped in Jackson at the Pig and Pint Barbecue, a local eatery that's become a favorite for travelers along the Trace. While it's a modern addition to the route, the restaurant reflects on the rich food traditions of the region. Slow-smoked meats, tangy sauces, and hearty sides that have been staples in the southern kitchens for generations. This is the real deal barbecue, very close to what you'll find in Texas. We got the Pitmaster sampler, which has brisket, half a rack of ribs, smoked chicken, and pulled pork, plus 2 sides. This is by far the best place to go, and easily the best place to go in Jackson. It's places like this that remind us that the Natchez Trace isn't just about history. It's about the living culture, where food, community, and hospitality continue to connect the people, just as the Trace connected travelers centuries ago. After that incredible meal, we set back out onto the Trace for our final leg of this adventure to discover some of the most interesting history. Continuing down the Natchez Trace, we arrive at the town of Rocky Springs, a settlement that once thrived in the early 19th century. Rocky Springs was strategically located along the Trace, serving as a waypoint for travelers, traders, and settlers moving between Natchez and Nashville. Its position made it a small but vital hub for commerce and communication in this region. At its peak, Rocky Springs boasted general stores, blacksmiths, churches, and homes, all supporting a tight-knit community. The town was also surrounded by farmland, where residents grew corn, cotton, and other crops that sustained both local needs and trade. The Natchez Trace itself was the lifeline for Rocky Springs, bringing people, goods, and news from far and wide. Imagine stagecoaches arriving with travelers seeking lodging or merchants hauling goods to be sold at a town's market. It was a bustling intersection of the frontier life. Walking among the ruins today, you can still see the foundations of homes and public buildings, Stone chimneys, scattered bricks, and weathered paths tell stories of people who lived here, families raising children, craftsmen perfecting their trades, and neighbors gathering for social events and religious services. Every remnant gives a glimpse into the rhythms of life in a community dependent on the trace. However, the town's prosperity was not to last. As railroads and alternative transportation routes emerged, traffic along the Natchez Trace dwindled. Businesses closed, families moved away, and by the late 19th century, Rocky Springs had largely vanished from maps, leaving only ghostly reminders of its once vibrant life. Yet, even in decline, the site preserves a powerful connection to the early American history, showing how transportation routes shaped settlements and communities. Visiting Rocky Springs today is both contemplative and inspiring. Standing among the ruins, it's easy to imagine the resilience, determination, and daily struggles of its residents. The town may be silent now, but its story of the frontier life, community, and the change along one of America's most historic roads remains vivid and tangible for those willing to pause and reflect. Not far from Rocky Springs, we encounter one of the most iconic features of the Natchez Trace, the Sunken Trace. These deeply worn roadways, carved by centuries of travelers, wagons, and livestock, are the striking reminder of how the passage of time and traffic can shape the land itself. In places like this, the trace has been worn down several feet below the surrounding forest floor, creating a natural, sunken pathway that feels almost like stepping back into the early 1800s. The Sunken Trace is more than just a visual oddity. It's a testament to the thousands of people who journey this route. Every indent into the path tells a story. Settlers moving west, traders transporting goods, and soldiers navigating these trails during times of conflict. The unique erosion pattern also reflects on the natural changes of travel, from rain and runoff to the sheer volume of foot and wheel traffic over the decades. As we arrive at the Emerald Mounds, you can immediately see why this site has stood as a testament to human ingenuity for centuries. These massive earthen structures were built by the Plaquemine culture. It's a civilization that thrived in the lower Mississippi Valley from roughly 1200 to 1700s. Closely related to the Mississippian peoples, the Plaquemine culture left behind these monumental mounds as centers of ceremony, governance, and community life. The site spans nearly 9 acres and consists of a massive central platform mound, flanked by several smaller mounds. The central mound rises approximately 35 feet high, with a base stretching over 900 feet long. The largest mound at the Emerald Mounds was likely the centerpiece of the complex, a platform for the residence of the chief or for ceremonial structures. Surrounding it, smaller mounds may have been supported temples, elite homes, or served as burial sites. Standing on these elevated platforms, leaders and religious figures could be seen from the entire community during important rituals, a reminder of the social and spiritual hierarchies that structured from the Plaquemine society. Archaeologists have uncovered fascinating details about life here. Ceramic artifacts, stone tools, and even evidence of palisades suggest that the site was not just ceremonial. It may have been fortified and highly organized. Post holes on the mounds indicate that large wooden buildings once crowned these earthen foundations, echoing the sophistication and planning of this pre-Columbian culture. By the time European explorers arrived in the region, these mounds had already been abandoned, but the Natchez people, who were descendants of the Plaquemine culture, continue to revere the site. As we conclude this second segment of the Natchez Trace, it's incredible to reflect on the rich tapestry of history that we've explored, from the birthplace of Elvis Presley to the ancient mounds, colonial settlements, and the winding river landscapes. Each stop tells a story of the people, culture, and challenges that shape this historic corridor. And while this concludes our trip along this section, there is still more to discover, from fascinating towns and historic sites to natural beauty along this route. Stay tuned for the next video where we continue our adventures. Thanks for watching.